In my first two videos on this cabinet build, I showed you how the sides and posts were going to be built, but I didn't actually do all this work. So I had quite a bit of catch up to get the whole project to the point that I had demonstrated in the first two videos. So I've gotten this far with the drawer, sides, fronts, and posts all finished. So for the rest of this video, I'm going to tell you about some challenges that I encountered as I got this done, and also some of the design challenge with a project like this. So each of the sections of the hinge post is fitted with a low friction bushing that's going to give it a lot smoother and reliable travel or pivot rather on the shaft. And some of these lined up perfectly and just slid right on and spun around with no friction, just like I wanted them to, and life was good. But actually most of them were just a little bit off, so that one bushing wasn't quite aligned with the other and it wouldn't quite fit on. And I kind of expected this and had a plan for how to deal with this inevitability. So I drew on the blank where exactly material needed to be removed. Took the bushings out, and then I just used this carving gouge to remove some of the material at the base of the recess for the bushing so that it could very slightly change direction. And once I did this, everything lined up and worked. So it was a relatively quick and easy way to fine-tune that alignment. So next I can say, after turning 22 of these, I really like the red paint, turning down to the red paint trick. And I did find that with a bit of practice, when I knew I was getting close to the end, when I was removing the last of the red paint, I could actually see little flecks of red paint scrape off where before I couldn't, because that last bit kind of comes off in one shaving. And that just leaves me with a little bit of red paint in the pores to sand off. So once I kind of got this trick down, the turning went a whole lot faster. And of course, remove a lot of wood and you expose flaws. I've never tried this before, but colored pencils allowed me to really match the grain up effectively to hide one of these in particular. Okay, changing gears and thinking about wood movement on a piece like this. So it was important that the grain of the post is running vertically because you don't want any growth in the posts, because that growth would be cumulative, meaning that the entire length of the post would increase and decrease with moisture if it wasn't running vertically, and you'd end up cracking the frame apart. So with it oriented vertically like this, there's no growth in the posts, and it doesn't matter that the spacers and the drawers themselves are horizontal, because that growth will happen with respect to each one of the individual post sections, and the gaps between the shelves will change very slightly. It won't cumulatively increase the height of the whole stack of drawers. And it's important that the spacers between the post and the drawers don't change horizontally, because if those shrunk, for example, then the drawers would end up sagging based on how I'm going to do the joinery between the posts and the drawers. And I want to talk about that joinery, but first a quick refresher from the last video. Remember that I said I wanted solutions for two different kinds of misalignment that the drawers might have. One that I'm calling twist, like a twist versus the hinge post, and then also a sagging with respect to the hinge post. So here's how I'm planning on being able to fine-tune both of those. So cutting in with this section plane allows you to see a cross section of the joinery. And what you see are 3 bolts threaded into the post and then housed on the end with an eccentric bushing that I can twist. And that twisting should allow me to correct slight twisted misalignments in the drawer to get it perfectly leveled out. And then for the sagging correction, I'm planning on having the inside surface, the surface of the spacer that touches the post, uh, be not quite a straight square line. So you see there's a gap at the bottom and a gap at the top on this one. And that creates a hinge on the middle point, so depending on how tight I tighten the top and bottom bolts, I can adjust for sag. Now there's a problem here. With the center point as the pivot point, the only bolt that's actually doing any work to hold the drawer up is the top one. And I was concerned that that wasn't quite strong enough and it would rip out. That's why I mentioned that concern at the end of the last video. But one minor tweak fixes this. If I have a gap just at the top and plan on the very bottom being the pivot point, I can still fine-tune, adjust the sagging of the drawer up or down, but now all three bolts are doing the work of holding the drawer up. So I'm much more confident this is going to work. One last change that's not modeled here, I think I'm going to epoxy all thread into the post and then turn a nut at inside of the drawer to do the fine adjustment, and that'll further strengthen those wooden threads and I think make this even more secure. I hadn't planned on doing this originally, but I think it's a good idea for each of the drawers to have a little catch that gives it support when it's in its closed position so that all that weight isn't hanging off the shaft. They've also, each one of those catches has a magnet in it for some positive registration when it gets closed, and a little ramp so that if there's a slight sag as it opens, that's corrected when it pops into place. I just think this is good insurance, and it might have let me size the shaft a little bit smaller so that it only has to carry the weight of an open drawer rather than all of the closed drawers when it's just at rest. So I think this is just a smart, prudent thing to do. And then some people notice that on the drawers, on the right side of the drawers, they were going to interfere with the frame. I was kind of planning on having a cutaway frame, but now I think I'm just going to have a seam on that back side so that when it opens that the drawer, the right side of the drawer doesn't interfere with the frame, and I can have a full not cut away frame. Now this does result in a seam that's probably more noticeable in this model than it would be in real life, and also that's the less visible side of the cabinet. So I think this is okay, and hopefully it'll look a bit more like this than it does when I'm showing the lines in the model.